Who were your mom and dad?
Harvey and Alice Underwood. Yeah.
When did they first come to Baldwin County?
Well, they were born in Baldwin County. My dad's daddy and his brother were the first two Underwoods, and they moved, as far as I know, Keith, from somewhere in North Carolina there. But each one of them, my dad's folks had 10 kids, and I think the other side had about 10. So now there's Underwoods everywhere. So I went out in the ninth grade. Keith had weighed 105 pounds and went out for the varsity. And you mentioned Jack Hellmeyer. I'll never forget the first ball game. We were on the sideline. We were out warming up. I could hear Jack. He was very loud. Who is that number 10? And who in the world is that number 10 out there? He's too small. But back then, everybody went out. You know, there was no junior varsity or no junior high team, so a lot of them, like Gene Underwood, went out in the 7th grade and started playing when he was in 8th grade. So that was the thing to do, you know, to go out football. And in fact, on that road where you and I lived, there were 6 of us one time, 6 Underwoods out at the same time. And we had a tough time catching a ride home with 6 people in one group. So we found out we'd put part of them in a ditch, and when somebody stopped, they'd all come out. Lowell was a very popular boy in school, probably the most popular in school, but he was a good football player and a good high school football player, and he and I went on to junior college together at school. And from that, he transferred to Livingston, and we played against each other. I went to Florence, and we played against each other. I guess one thing I remember, we were playing Livingston, and on the kickoff, it didn't matter who he was supposed to block or anything, but he'd come after me. It didn't matter where the ball went or what, he'd come after me as hard as he could.
And y'all coached together for a long time.
12 years, yeah. Lowell was a good coach. He good coach, good disciplinarian, and he studied football all the time. So, you know, some coaches don't and some do, and Lowell studied it night and day.
What do you remember about him playing?
I guess things I remember, Lowell was a good, you know, played both ways. He was a good defensive player, and I remember just about every game he'd block 1 or 2 punts, just about every ball game. He was a good ball player. I remember that our senior year, Gene Underwood got hurt. He was a quarterback, and Lowell had to move from offensive guard to quarterback. But he did a good job. You know, didn't have about 4, 5, 6 plays, and that was it. So really, he's a strong guy.
Vance Parks.
Vance is one I told you, big, exceptionally well built, big, strong guy. I remember weighed 225, and you know, was probably 6'1" or 2. And
Robert Pruitt.
Robert was a big guy for back then, weighed 220 pounds, and really good guy. And best thing I guess I remember, he and I always sat together going to ball games. We were good friends, and we always sat together going and coming and stuff. Robert died not too long, a few years back.
Okay. All right, let me read through the scores from 1950. Y'all were county champions, if I read that correctly. It said y'all beat St. Stanislaus 13-6. Lost to Pensacola 25-0. Talk about Pensacola. My daddy's talked a lot about how
they had
were.
a really good football team back then, and we kind of compared them with Atmore that year. Atmore beat us, and Pensacola beat us. And, I don't remember a whole lot about them. I remember they ran from a T formation. That was kind of different to see back then. You know, just about everybody ran from a single wing. So that was different.
Okay. Beat Monroeville 14-6. Beat Flomanton 32-6. Beat Robertsdale 8-0. I said lost Atmore 26-0. Beat W.S. Neal 14-0. Beat Bay Minette 14-0. Tied Fairhope 20-20 and tied Bigger 6-6. Any of those games stand out to you?
I guess the Fairhope game, that was our last game, and we tied them 20-20, I believe it was. And that's when that Billy Hoffman, we were lucky to tie them, I tell you. They had a good football team. And he was a...
How about assistant coaches, Tommy Robinson? Remember anything about Coach Robinson?
Yeah, I knew Tommy really well, and he came up and helped me one year at Bay Minette. And well, he taught up there, and then Tommy was a good punter, and so when he helped us, I had him work with the punters a lot. He was I don't think he played a lot of football, but he was a big athletic guy and weighed about 6'2" and 220 pounds. And I guess the thing I remember most about him when we were at Foley, Keith, is somebody had the boxing gloves there, and I don't know why, but I ended up boxing him. And I had, like all of my brothers, and we all did it, you know, boxed and we'd walk to the armory and work out and box. And anyhow, he and I ended up boxing, and I was a lot quicker, and I jabbed him in the nose 2 or 3 times, and then all of a sudden the lights went out. I was on my back. I was totally unconscious. But he was a good guy. I really liked Tommy. Now, he wasn't in coaching, he wasn't a big disciplinarian, but he was a smart guy, and I really liked him. He and I used to hunt some, even when I was a student and he was a coach. We'd go hunting, and he loved to quail hunt, and then we'd cook them together. And so he was a good guy.
How about Al Lunsford? Was he an assistant?
A volunteer
assistant,
and he was a good one. He was very demanding, and he lived right across from us. You know where we live? In that house right in front of us. That's where he lived.
Okay.
And he and Herbert, his brother, and Al was really a sharp guy. And I was talking to my Uncle Tom, and he said that he was teaching math, and Al helped him a lot. Any problems he couldn't work, Al would help him do it. So.
How about that? I think I saw something I did not know. I was looking at some write-ups this summer. It said that Al Lunsford was the head coach of Bay Minette in '41. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
I did not know that.
I didn't.
But I don't know if beyond that. I don't know beyond that. But I think in '41 he was the head coach.
That'd be interesting. You know,
yes,
I just.
Is Coach Meredith a pretty intimidating type of fella?
He could be.
Yeah, he could be.
He could be.
So I had a lot of respect for him.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I liked him. I think.
Yeah, he's a good
most
guy. I
of them
liked him. And after I started coaching in Fairhope, I coached against him when he was at Bottle-Battery. And then after I got to Bay Minette, I tried to get him to play us, but I couldn't do it. He was a good guy, though. Really a good guy.
About Mr. McGowan, y'all got any Mr. McGowan stories?
You talk about a disciplinarian, Keith.
he was.
His arm was about that big around, real thin. Always had his hat pulled down, looking at. All he had to do was walk down the corridor, and I mean, people scattered, and
Very much so.
I had a tendency to get on the wrong side of the track every once in a while, and he could get me back on the right side. In fact, I wrote that out. He was at one of our banquets one night, and I told him about that. I had a tendency to get on the wrong side of the track and get in trouble, but I don't think I've ever known anyone, small guy like that was as good a disciplinarian as he was.
Do you have any specific stories about Mr. McGowan you want to share?
Well, the only thing, I guess, I applied for, this is including Mr. McGowan, I applied for the Bay Minette job the year before I got it, and they hired another guy. In fact, the principal, who was a principal then, told me I had the job. And at the time I was coaching at Scuba with Coach Sullivan. So I went back home, and he called me and said he changed his mind. He's going to give it to somebody else. He gave it to Bobby Wasden, who was a Auburn graduate. And Bobby went 0-10 that year, lost every game. And so I remember that somebody that heard him, a good friend of mine, was in the office, and several people went in and told Mr. Guy they want to recommend somebody. He told them, get their ass out of there. He said, I know somebody to win, and I'm going to get him. And that's when he hired me. But, I mean, it didn't matter who you were, how big you were, he had control.
Or game? Your best game you feel like that you remember playing?
Probably against Robert Steele that year. Robert Steele had Joe Childress, who was an All-American at Auburn and a terrific running back, and we beat them, and I think that's the most outstanding game that we had that year. It was Fairhope game was a good game. It had Billy Hoffman back then, and they had some good football players, but I would say the Robert Steele game. About that, talking about the jerseys back then, you know, Coach Meredith had them all in a sack, and as you came up, you just got a jersey. I think I wore 86 or something like that as a center. Everybody had you know, just whatever happened to come out of the sack, it was your jersey.
Trust. How about R.L. Smith? Y'all have any stories about R.L. Smith?
I've known him well, Keith, since he started teaching here, and he had just gotten out of the Navy and started here. And back then, he was a real handsome guy, and all the girls were crazy about him. I remember that. But I had him for a senior homeroom teacher, and I had him for a science teacher. He was a good teacher. And the things that I know most about him is he's done a lot of things for the people, the youth of this county, and a lot for the elderly people, and he still does. And even though I think he's 96 years old now, and I still run into him and see him every once in a while and talk to him. And he's written several books, sent me copies of his books, and he was a great guy, super guy.